Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into your source materials. We've got this amazing collection of texts.
Right.
They basically give us the ultimate blueprint for prayer, the architecture, you could say.
Yeah, the structure.
But then right away, they hold that perfect blueprint up against, well, one of the most dramatic stories of human anger and resentment out there, the Book of Jonah.
That's exactly it. Our mission today is to try and get, a quick but really deep understanding of spiritual devotion by looking at these ideas together.
Synthesizing them.
Yeah. We're focusing on the purpose of prayer, not just like the mechanics of doing it. What happens when this ideal structure for connecting with God, the Lord's Prayer, just smacks right into the messy reality of a prophet.
A prophet who knows God is merciful.
Knows it perfectly well.
But just can't handle it. He hates it almost.
It sets up such a powerful contrast, doesn't it?
It really does. And we're going to start, like your sources do, with this foundational idea, this promise that kind of invites us into the whole relationship in the first place. It's from Psalm 145, verse 18. The Lord is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth.
That's the perfect starting point, because prayer fundamentally isn't about bridging some huge gap. It's about closeness, proximity.
An invitation.
Exactly, an invitation into a personal relationship. But that last part is crucial, in truth.
What does that mean exactly? In truth?
Well, I think it means sincerity, right? Honesty. You have to be willing to actually be present in that relationship authentically.
Okay, so it sets the stage for honesty. Now, let's unpack the blueprint itself. We go to Luke chapter 11. Jesus' disciples come up to him.
Yeah.
And they ask him pretty directly, Lord, teach us to pray, just as John taught his disciples. They wanted him a water.
They absolutely did. They were looking for like the how-to, a pattern they could follow.
And the prayer Jesus gives them. It's a masterclass. It's efficient, it's structured, but maybe most importantly, it's about orientation, how you position yourself.
That's a great way to put it. Before we even ask for anything for ourselves, what are we told to do? Address God as Father.
Right, Father. And I think maybe we sometimes just skim over how huge that word is, Father, especially thinking about the early church context. And you mentioned Romans 8 and the sources.
Yes, the spirit of adoption.
Exactly. A spirit of adoption as sons through which we cry, Abba, Father. That's not just a formal title.
No, it's completely transformative. It's about intimacy. You really hit on something critical there.
It feels different.
Totally. Moving from seeing God as, this distant, all-powerful, maybe even scary being.
Right.
To calling him Abba, which is such an intimate, almost like daddy kind of term.
Right.
It just reframes the whole relationship.
So if we're praying to a father,
then we're praying from a place of trust.
Right.
Security. Because we've received that spirit of adoption. It sets the entire tone. Our alignment starts with, radical trust.
Okay. And once that intimacy is established, the prayer immediately pivots. It goes outward.
Yeah.
We hallow his name, and then we look forward. Your kingdom come.
Yeah.
It's like we're putting our own stuff aside for a second.
For the moment, yeah. We're focusing on the big picture, the universal scope first.
It's an act of decentering ourselves. Is that fair?
I think that's exactly right. Only after we establish that core trust and focus on God's will, then we shift. Then we get to the immediate practical stuff.
Which brings us to, give us each day our daily bread. Now, this gets misinterpreted sometimes, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Your sources really stressed the daily part. This isn't like praying for a winning lottery ticket or a 10-year financial plan.
Joe, and that's so important for understanding the humility baked into this prayer. We're not asking for long-term stockpiles or, riches.
Just for today.
Just for today. Provision, that's enough for right now.
Right.
It forces us into this posture of daily reliance, daily trust.
It requires faith that, okay, tomorrow I'll pray again, and the need will be met again.
Exactly. Continuous dependence.
Okay, now here's where the structure gets really challenging and where the Lord's Prayer becomes this direct, almost contractual commitment to action.
The conditional part.
Yes. Forgive us our sins, for we ourselves forgive everyone in debt to us.
This is the absolute hinge point of the whole prayer, I think. It ties receiving God's grace directly to us extending human mercy.
It's conditional. Explicitly.
It is. And what's fascinating, the theological source material you have reinforces this idea that God already knows what we need before we ask.
Right. So the prayer isn't really for God's information.
Not at all. It's a tool, a mechanism for aligning our hearts with God's purpose, which is what? Love and forgiveness.
So if we're holding on to resentment, if we refuse to forgive someone else,
We're basically sabotaging our own prayer, structurally speaking. We're blocking the very foundation of our plea for mercy from God.
wow. So it becomes a kind of litmus test for how sincere we are in that relationship.
I think so. If we can't live out that daily commitment to forgiveness, we're kind of undermining the whole truth thing we started with from Psalm 145, aren't we?
Yeah, the authenticity. It all connects back.
It does. And then that final plea, do not subject us to the final test. It feels like a necessary request then. Like, help us stick with this alignment, because it's hard.
It acknowledges the struggle. Okay, so if that's the perfect architectural blueprint, alignment, trust, universal mercy, we absolutely have to turn now to the guy in your sources who basically looked at that blueprint and said, nope.
Yeah, Jonah.
The prophet Jonah. This beautiful design for prayer just runs headlong into the messy, specific, really quite petty drama of human resentment.
It's such a powerful pivot because Jonah is the ultimate counterexample. He is the embodiment of refusing to forgive.
Wanting vengeance instinct.
Exactly. Failing to align. But, and this is key, Jonah isn't ignorant. He's not some theological rookie. He knows exactly what God is like.
He absolutely does. When God decides not to destroy Nineveh, this huge foreign city that Jonah had been sent to preach doom against, Jonah just completely loses it.
He's furious.
Intensely angry. And in his prayer, his complaint to God, he basically throws God's own characteristics back in his face. He says, I knew it. I knew that you are a gracious and merciful God, slow to anger, rich in clemency, low to punish.
Just think about that for a second, the depth of that admission.
He ran away because God was merciful.
Precisely. He didn't flee to Tarshish because he thought God was cruel or something. He ran because he was certain God was gracious and merciful.
And he didn't want Nineveh to get any of that grace.
No, he wanted them wiped out. His running away was a conscious act of rebellion against God's compassion based on accurate knowledge.
He understood the architecture of mercy perfectly well. He just hated the zip code it was being applied to.
That's one way to put it. And your sources back this up, this universal nature of God's concern. You see it in Psalm 86, that responsorial psalm.
Right, the refrain.
It repeats over and over, celebrating God's attributes. Good, forgiving, abounding in kindness to all who call on him. Not just some, all.
So the divine character is established. Forgiveness, universal reach. That's the backdrop.
That's the divine context. And Jonah's complaint is basically, you're too nice, God, and it messes up my personal geopolitical scorecard.
Which brings us right into the thick of Jonah chapter 4, this paradox of his anger, where the resentment hits levels that are honestly almost comical than their despair.
It really is something. The city is spared. God shows mercy, and Jonah's reaction is so over the top.
He wants to die.
He prays for death. Please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live.
Just think about that. He's angry because God did what Jonah knew God would do.
Yeah.
Because God acted according to his own nature. Mercy.
It just throws into sharp relief how dangerous it is when we let our own standard of fairness, which, let's be honest, is usually just vengeance dressed up, override God's standard of compassion.
So Jonah stomps off, builds himself a little hut outside the city.
Still sulking. Still hoping maybe God will change his mind and zap the place after all.
Yeah, just watching. And this is where we get the famous gourd plant story, which seems so random, but it's clearly designed purely to expose Jonah's completely backwards priorities.
God steps in with this little object lesson. He makes a plant grow up super fast.
Provides shade for Jonah.
Right. Relieves his discomfort out there in the sun. And the text specifically says Jonah was very happy over the plant.
That detail feels really important. He didn't plant it. He didn't water it. He did nothing for it.
Nope.
But he benefited personally, and that made him happy. His joy was tied completely to his own immediate physical comfort.
Exactly. But then, of course, the next morning, God sends a worm, attacks the plant, it withers and dies. Just like that, Jonah's little bubble of comfort is gone.
And then God doubles down.
Yep. Sends a scorching east wind, the sun beats down, Jonah gets faint. And his reaction...
Same as before. The double death wish. He asks for death again.
He was angry enough to die because Nineveh got mercy, and now he's angry enough to die because his personal shade plant is gone.
It's quite something. And God calls him on it, right? Asks him twice, have you reason to be angry? First about the city, then about the plant.
And Jonah's answer about the plant is just pure defiance. I have reason to be angry. Angry enough to die.
Wow. The source of material paints this picture of just extreme, almost absurd levels of despair over Well, over foliage.
Yeah.
What does that tell us? That severity over something so small.
Well, it shows how completely consuming misplaced priorities can be, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Jonah basically equates losing his temporary shade, his physical comfort, with like a reason for existential cosmic despair, a reason to want to cease existing.
He values this plant he didn't even work for.
More than the lives of an entire city full of people, and that's the absolute core of God's closing argument to him.
Okay, let's get into that final comparison. Because this is where it all comes together, isn't it? Where the deep dive really connects the dots. God just lays out the difference between Jonah's tiny, selfish world and his own vast universal concern.
He does. He points out Jonah's own calculation, or lack thereof. He says, look, you got upset about this plant. It cost you no labor. You did not raise it.
Came up overnight, died overnight.
Right. Your concern was fleeting, self-serving, and possessive. You cared because it benefited you.
And then comes the hammer blow, the contrast that loops right back to the Lord's prayer principles and slams into Jonah's failure. God asks him,
and should I not be concerned over Nineveh, the great city?
In which there are more than 120,000 persons who cannot distinguish their right hand from their left.
Like children, basically. Innocent or ignorant in God's eyes.
Not to mention the many cattle.
Don't forget the livestock. That detail always gets me.
Too, such a mic drop moment. That's the scale shift, right?
Absolutely. Jonah is furious about a weed he didn't earn. God is concerned about 120,000 human beings. He seizes vulnerable children, plus the animals.
The sheer scope of God's concern is just immense. It reaches down to the smallest creatures in a foreign enemy capital.
So when you place this whole crisis of mercy, Jonah's story, back alongside the structure of the Lord's Prayer.
The lesson is unavoidable.
Totally. Jonah failed the conditional covenant. He basically prayed, forgive my sins, God, but please let me stay furious at everyone else.
His anger over his own minor discomfort just clashes so violently with the huge universal compassion that the prayer demands we align ourselves with.
The story of Jonah is what happens when you ignore that crucial step as we forgive those indebted to us. It shows that prayer isn't just asking for stuff, it's a commitment to try and live out God's scale of mercy.
And if our hearts aren't trying to get there, aren't aligned with that big purpose,
then our prayers risk becoming just, well, complaints. Griping about how we think the universe should be run instead of trying to fit into how it is run based on divine mercy.
Wow. This has been quite a journey. We went from the specific rules, the blueprint for approaching God, trust, humility, forgiveness.
The ideal architecture.
Right. To this shocking, almost darkly funny, real-world example of just how hard it is to actually live that way, especially when God's mercy conflicts with our own desire for, well, payback.
The contrast really does force you to think about where your own focus lies. Does it stop with your own comfort, like Jonah's plant, or does it try to stretch?
It forces us past that self-concern, maybe, towards embracing a compassion that's broader, often uncomfortable, but maybe matches God's own scale a little better.
That seems to be the goal.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Your sources clearly show us God's concern is vast. It extends even to the many cattle in Nineveh. Just think about that, a universal, seemingly unbound concern.
It's huge.
So, if the scope of God's interest is that broad stretching to livestock, to children in a foreign city, what does that specific daily command in the Lord's Prayer, the one requiring you to forgive those in debt to you, what does that teach you about the limits, or maybe the potential lack of limits, on your own capacity for mercy? Something powerful to consider, I think, as you figure out the true architecture of your own devotion.